Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. What was the real reason why Masarat Alam was released? Official letters released today suggest the decision was taken during governor's rule, and so it's hard to believe the Home Minister and Prime Minister were not in the loop. Secondly, was Mufti Said simply responding to the dictates of the law rather than taking a political decision of his own? In part 2, I shall speak to PDP spokesperson and Jammu and Kashmir Education Minister Naeem Akhtar for the official answer. But first, as the central government struggles to convert its land acquisition ordinance into an act, it's considering several steps to dilute the original measure. Is this a sign the government has been pushed into a corner by the combined opposition? And what message does it send to industry just when industry was awaiting the effective delivery of reforms? That's the first debate tonight. Joining me to discuss the struggling fate of the government's land acquisition ordinance is BJP spokesperson GVL Narasimha Rao. He will be with us shortly. Shiromani Akali Dal MP Naresh Gujral, he too will be with us shortly. Both of them are actually held up in Parliament at the moment. Congress spokesperson Randeep Singh Surjewala, the political editor of the Business Standard Aditi Fadnas, and former CEO, author and columnist Gurcharan Das. Aditi Fadnas, the government has decided to move 9, I'm being told actually in my ear it could be as many as 11 amendments to the land acquisition ordinance, which is clearly going to dilute its original intention. Isn't this a clear proof that they're scared they're not going to get the measure passed in the Rajya Sabha, and now they're desperate to win support through these amendments?
Well, I don't think I'll be exaggerating if I say that the government has had to eat humble pie really badly. The fact is that initially they were absolutely clear that they will not compromise, that the land acquisition bill will not be amended, that they will pass it and if necessary call for a joint session. Now I think wisdom has dawned and they are a little wiser now, and they feel that it won't go through the Rajya Sabha, it will just drag on and on and on, because Rajya Sabha was very clear that they would refer it to a standing committee. So frankly, there was a degree of consensus on an extremely contentious issue. Land is a very contentious issue. Acquiring it is even more contentious. Who will gain the benefit of it is even more contentious. And the past government had achieved a degree of consensus. Sadly, that broke down. Now with the amendments, hopefully there will be some measure of understanding on what is the process that India should adopt for land acquisition, which will not come in the way of growth, but will also ensure that those who own the land don't...
Mr. Narasimha Rao, you're with us, you're the BJP spokesperson at this moment as we're talking. In fact, your amendments are being voted upon in the Lok Sabha, but it's already clear from reports coming out of the Lok Sabha that the BJD and the TRS have walked out. Every suggestion that we're getting, although it's still only reporter-based, is that in fact many of the other smaller parties feel you haven't done enough by way of your amendments to win their support. So I'm going to ask you a critical question. Do you think the 9 or 11 amendments to your own ordinance are sufficient to guarantee support in the Rajya Sabha? Or are you still running a terrible risk that the bill could fail at the Rajya Sabha? What's your feeling today?
Karan, actually, I think you should give the credit to the government for having an open-mindedness, and from the word go, before the bill was introduced in Parliament, the Prime Minister stated on the floor of the House that
if there is any possibility, if there are any amendments required to make them a more pro-farmer, certainly the government is willing to consider all suggestions. So the amendments that the government has itself accepted this morning actually indicate government's flexibility, open-mindedness.
Yeah, but you're not answering my question. My question was a specific one, not whether you're suddenly flexible and accommodating, which you weren't a little while ago. That change of heart you're entitled to. I'm asking whether you think you've done enough to ensure you will have support in the Rajya Sabha. Remember, the TRS and the BJD have walked out of the Lok Sabha. Several of the other smaller parties who are critical are clearly suggesting you haven't done enough. So answer that question. Will you get this passed in the Rajya Sabha, yes or no?
The government will make every possible effort to get everyone on board. And the bill that has now been passed by the Lok Sabha with the amendments
it's not passed as yet. It's not passed as yet.
It's okay. Some amendments have been voted upon, But you see, the government will certainly want to take the same bill to Rajya Sabha and will make every effort to pass it.
Yes, but
This
if
is
the
a part of-
TRS and the BJP are walking out of the Lok Sabha and you take the same bill that they walked out onto the Rajya Sabha, they'll walk out there as well. So my question remains, how confident are you can get this passed in the Rajya Sabha? Answer that specifically.
I think you know the numbers, Karan. I think it's a common sense. We know what are the numbers of different political parties in Rajya Sabha. The government would actually want the bill to be taken to the Rajya Sabha in the manner in which it is exactly passed by Lok Sabha and no further changes to be made. And now effort will be made to get
You're not
everyone
answering
on
my
board.
question, so I'm going to stop you there. Government, I know, will make every effort. That's what the government exists to do. I was asking you whether you believe that effort will succeed, and you haven't got the confidence
We
to
are
say
quite
a simple
open- we
word
are
like
quite-
yes. All you had to say was
We
yes.
are quite
but you didn't.
optimistic.
Optimism.
I think you have to be optimistic.
We are all optimistic till we end up losing. Everyone is. Let me bring you in at this point, Randeep Singh Surjewala. Yesterday, at a meeting that Congress MPs had with Sonia Gandhi in the evening, it was decided that no amendments would be sufficient to win Congress support. You are insisting on the bill remaining exactly like the Act in 2013 passed by your government. Is there anything that can get you to change your position when this bill comes to the Rajya Sabha for that critical vote? Or will you stick adamantly by yesterday's decision that you want the 2013 Act retained intact?
Well, Mr. Thapar, being pro-farmer is not being anti-growth or adamant. Let me clarify that. There are three things which are very clear. This is a bill that became an act in 2013 with complete political unanimity, with amendments moved by the then leader of opposition in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, Mr. Jaitley and Ms. Sushma Swaraj, having been accepted by the Congress party. This law has not fully come into force as yet. BJP, to gain immediate political mileage prior to parliament elections, voted for the act with a clear mind that they will whittle down the soul, spirit and structure of the act later on, which they seek to do now. I have looked at the amendments, some of them which are now being moved. They are nothing more than wishy-washy. They do nothing, add nothing, take away nothing from the proposed ordinance. Our objection is very simple. By adding section 10A, under which you can add every possible conceivable acquisition, you are abrogating, abolishing, finishing section 4 to 10 in chapter 2 and chapter 3, which talks about social impact assessment.
And that is not acceptable.
About,
quite right. I'm just curtailing you because I don't...
also talk about two more things. Just one line,
Mr. Surjewala, we're aware of what the ordinance does. Please don't repeat that. I wanted to ask whether there's any hope Congress could change its position on the ordinance as a result of the amendments. You're saying to me the amendments are wishy-washy, they don't suffice. That's the answer, isn't it?
That's correct. The amendments are only in a simple attempt to hoodwink and to give BJP allies an escape route to support in their quest for power and to say that yes, they propose to make government made some superficial amendments which are nothing.
Let me bring in Mr. Gurcharan Das. Mr. Das, I approach you as a former CEO of a company, as an author, as a man who's committed to development and understands the need for reforming land acquisition. Now, Randeep Singh Surjewala says that the amendments being moved by the government are not sufficient to win Congress support because they're wishy-washy. They don't in any material way, as far as he's concerned, change the ordinance. But according to the papers, the amendments, in fact, that are being moved as we speak will actually exempt small projects from social impact assessment. They will limit the quantity of land that can be bought without consent. They exclude multi-crop land except as a last resort. They limit the size of industrial corridors, very importantly. They insist on compulsory employment for one member of each affected family, and they make redressal easier, and there could be more. So my question is this. Do these amendments, which are now supported by the government, actually dilute the land acquisition amendment to the point at which the intention of spurring industry and investment gets undermined?
Well, the fact of the matter is, I want to remove this a little bit, get a little distance from adversarial politics of power. The issue really for the country is jobs. We have to create 1 million jobs a month. And frankly, let's admit that the law that was passed in 2013 was deeply flawed.
That I understand. I'm asking you a
And so
slightly,
what we are
I'm
trying
asking
to
you
do-
a slightly different question. I accept that the 2013 law was flawed. I'm asking you whether the amendments
Yes.
to the ordinance that the government is now passing vitiate the ordinance. You welcomed the ordinance because it would actually spur investment, industry and jobs. Now, are the amendments
Yes,
to that
yes.
ordinance vitiating and undermining what you approved of? Answer that for me.
No, I think, I don't think in substantial terms they will vitiate them. The fact is, what is retained in the ordinance is the removal of some of the red tape which had paralyzed. What we have to understand is that today the process of land acquisition is totally paralyzed. And unless we get out of the red tape, and the issue is state capacity. Our state does not have the capacity
I'm interrupting you again because I want to stick to what's happening in Parliament. You're happy as an industrialist and as an author and a supporter of development with the amendments the government is moving to the ordinance. You don't think they undermine the ordinance. Give me a clear answer to that.
No. I think that the amendments that they are proposing do not.
Okay.
The spirit of the ordinance stays.
Why?
The red tape has been removed.
Why? And answer this to me if you can. Has the government not gone in for a joint sitting? Because earlier, and repeatedly they said they would, they thought, and perhaps they still do, that they have the numbers in a joint sitting. Have they been worried by the noises being made by the Lok Jan Shakti, by the SAD and by the Shiv Sena? Have they lost their nerve? And is that why they're now passing amendments in the hope they can win support and pass it at the Rajya Sabha rather than going to the joint sitting?
First of all, just look at the amendments that they have passed.
I'm going to Aditi Fadnis. Yeah.
Just look at the amendments they have passed. One amendment which was proposed by the Samajwadi Party was that why don't you copy the UP law which gives a job in perpetuity to at least one, if not more than one member of the family. They have agreed to that. The other proposal was not to exclude multi-crop land. They have accepted that. So what Mr. Surjewala is saying is roughly what it is, that they have accepted the less harmful to growth proposals in return for support in the Rajya Sabha.
But why did they not take the gamble and the risk of going to the joint sitting and pass the ordinance as it was? Because if they have the numbers, that would have been a better message for industry than this watered down version.
Karan, the joint sitting proposal would have taken at least 2 years. At least, at the very least. Because you would have had a situation, first of all, joint sitting can only be called when Parliament is not in session.
But if the bill had been defeated in the Rajya Sabha, having been passed, it could have gone immediately.
But it needed to be defeated in the Rajya Sabha.
Would that have taken time?
Of course, the Rajya Sabha would have said that the bill which we had passed earlier was the property of the House. Now you've brought another bill and we want to send this to the standing committee or the select committee. So that would have taken at least 18 months.
So this was a quicker way out.
So I think they have taken a gamble. It's a big gamble. You don't know. You still don't know which way Samajwadi Party will go or BJD will go.
Let me put this to you. Mr. Narasimha Rao, many people feel that the government in July, when Nitin Gadkari was briefly the Rural Development Minister, did consult state governments, did get a response from them that they wanted changes. But since July, you haven't done any further consultation. Now, the ordinance is a direct result of what the BJP wanted. And had you done consultation in December, in November, and even in January, you would have had better acquiescence and cooperation from the smaller parties. Have you, in terms of co-opting parties, consulting them, mishandled this?
I certainly don't think so. I think the government, you see, when you have a stakeholder consultation, when you have a meeting of all the state revenue ministers, you don't need to have it periodically or repeatedly. The issue was discussed threadbare and all the states submitted their suggestions. And now the question is, why are some parties opposing it? It's plain politics.
No, just a moment.
It's plain politics.
No, it's not. I'll tell you why. Because you see, you said this issue was discussed threadbare, and yet you're accepting 9 or 11 amendments made by the smaller parties. You could have accepted these amendments earlier, and you would have had better cooperation. And that's why I repeat my question. After July, you haven't consulted. If you had, you might have had a wider platform of support. Have you therefore mishandled it? Have you been a little arrogant and a little dismissive, and now you're repenting?
Absolutely not. I think the manner in which the government had stated upfront, even before the bill was brought into Parliament, even within the party, we had consultations with farmers' groups. And also there was consultation with farmer organizations.
The consultations with farmers groups only happened when Amit Shah 2 weeks ago realized that you hadn't consulted them at all. That was after the ordinance was passed, not before. The consultation should have happened the other way around.
I think
you're proving my point for me.
Let me just add. Let me speak a few sentences. Please don't interrupt me. You see, the government, we are racing against time.
So
we have already been in power for 9 months. We cannot, because the Congress party will never get convinced. Because they are anti-development. Well, and there is nothing Congress will get convinced about.
Just a moment.
So
I don't think this is an occasion for you to cast aspersions on the Congress party, particularly when you're avoiding the question I'm asking you anyway. Let me bring in Randeep Singh Surjewala and let me put this to you. Mr. Surjewala, there's no doubt that the policy your party is adopting of refusing to accept the ordinance with any amendment proposed by the government will win you the loyalty and support of the farming community. But equally, by the same token, you're alienating India's industrialists, you're alienating the middle class, and you're alienating that aspirational section of the population who need jobs and believe, and it's another matter whether they're wrong, believe that this measure is essential to the creation of jobs. Does it not worry you that you may be getting the balance of support and animosity wrong?
Well, let me put it like this, Mr. Thapar. I said it right in the beginning. Being pro-farmer, ensuring that farmers do not lose their land and jobs both, as also livelihood, doesn't mean that we are anti-industry, as BJP would like everybody to believe. But having said that, may I just draw your attention to the amendments. It says we will give a job to a farm labourer. But BJP probably did not read the second schedule of the existing act, which promises a job to all landless families who were dependent on the land. So what does the amendment serve? I ask myself. Nothing, except it's a hogwash. Similarly, they say that under section 10A, I'm just pointing out two important
very quickly, because I don't want to get lost in detail.
Relevant. Yeah, they say that we will add a clause which says minimum land will be acquired. Minimum land acquisition conditionality is already provided in section 8. So by duplicating it at another place, that does not materially alter the ordinance.
I take your point.
So
in other
amendments
words,
are nothing but of political convenience.
Absolutely. You're substantiating your point that this series of amendments are simply to placate and provide an excuse for the allies to suddenly change their mind and support the government, but actually they amount to very little, which is why you don't accept them. I want to come back to Gurcharan Das and ask you this. We are running out of time, Mr. Das, but today you see the land acquisition ordinance, I would say, stumbling. Whether it completely falls or not, we'd only find out in due course. Does it worry you that tomorrow something similar could happen to insurance? And beyond that, what message is this sending to industry? Just when industry was hoping after the budget for effective, strong reforms, the government seems to be politically faltering in delivery.
Well, it's not just sending a bad message to industry. It's sending a bad message to any Indian who wants a job. And it's sending a message basically that politics in India is trumping the national interest. And what we need desperately now is to bring up our growth rate, to create jobs for the people. Even the farmers' children want those jobs. And this false trade-off between what farmers want and what industry want. It's what jobs everybody wants.
So in the process
And so
of this,
I'm really very sad.
there's no doubt that this is sad, but is this also going to affect and undermine Mr. Modi's image as a reformer and B, a man who delivers on promises? Because suddenly, in terms of that delivery, there's a stumble or two.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's very disappointing what has happened. And I just feel very bad that actually the opposition, the same wrong role that the BJP played in the last government, the opposition, the Congress, is playing in this role, in this government.
I'm going to come back to you very quickly,
really
Aditi, for one last word. Do you think that the BJP today, as a result of not just the Delhi elections, as a result not just of the confusion in Jammu and Kashmir where the government is facing trouble, that it suddenly looks less sure-footed, less confident of being able to deliver?
I think the Prime Minister knows exactly what he wants, but I'm not sure if the government knows what it wants. Even on the rural development issue on this land acquisition, the first minister of the BJP who tragically died in a road accident said that there will be no change in the rural land acquisition act.
Reversed that.
And then, so
and
he
then
died.
Virendra Singh reversed it again.
Precisely. So, I mean, I don't think the government knows exactly what it wants. And if the government doesn't know and only the Prime Minister knows and it's the best kept secret in the world, then I'm afraid we're in a lot of trouble.
Well, that will have to be the concluding note for this particular discussion. My thanks to you for coming to studio. My thanks also to my other guests.